Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley. Welcome back to Big 12 Insiders. Today, we are talking in Cincinnati at Arizona State. I'm not sure there's a lot of people at the beginning of the season, and I'll get with our man, Chad Brendel here. He's joining us, who covers University of Cincinnati for 24/7 Sports, about, if anybody thought that this game was going to be such a big game deep into the season when you saw the schedule. So we will get into all of that and more. Again, before we do, as always, remember to like, follow, subscribe, and continue to leave those comments. We appreciate you guys. So first things first, Chad, how are you doing, my man?
Doing good. We're at that fun part of the year where basketball and football start to mix. So a lot going on. We've got a press conference with Wes Miller and John Diebler from Ohio State ahead of their charity exhibition on Friday, coming up a little later this afternoon. So a lot of good stuff happening in Bearcat Journal.
That is good stuff, man. Glad to hear. So speaking specifically on the football program, sitting here at 4-2, what's the overall feeling of the Bearcat, if you want to call it Bearcat Nation? Administrators, coaches, players, sitting here at 4-2, what is the feeling of the program right now with everyone, including fans?
Things are a lot more positive than they were a year ago. Obviously, they've already surpassed last season's win total.
Yes.
There's always a certain juice that comes with knowing you got quarterback right. And
right.
You might have quarterback right for the foreseeable future.
Right.
And they got it right with Indiana transfer Brendan Sorsby. He's been one of the better quarterbacks in the Big 12. One of the better top, whatever percent you want to put on it, quarterbacks in America so far this season. And there's a little extra bounce in your step when you look to game day and we got a guy that's going to be able to get us through whatever bumps in the road might apply. And they feel like they have that with Brendan Sorsby, and that changes everything.
Yeah. And I'll admit, I was a little bullish on him at the beginning of the season for the simple fact I saw him last year, but I think a lot of that had to do, Chad, with he was at Indiana and with that program in which they fired the coach. So what we're seeing from Indiana this year is not the same coaching staff. And Brendan Sorsby was a part of all of that last year that led to a coaching being fired. Clearly it wasn't him. No. It was Indiana. So what does he mean? I know you touched on a little bit, but let's get into that a little. What does he mean to this program, man? Because he's playing very, very good football.
It's just a belief of offensively you're going to be okay. They were heavily dominant on the run game last year. Emory Jones just didn't work out, and one of the reasons was he was. And some of this was offensive line related. This is not piling on Emory Jones.
Right.
They did not have great pass protection last year. So Emory Jones, take the snap, look at your number one guy, look at your hot route or your check down, and then get the hell out of the pocket because they're coming for you. And Sorsby, if you watch, you can see the processing. You can see him checking every read, and then going back and making sure that first guy might not have come open in the process and allowing that offense to flow. I mean, last year, go back just to the UCF game. Last year, if they didn't have Xavier Henderson, who was a Florida transfer, who's going to be an NFL wide receiver, if he wasn't open, there wasn't a passing game to be found.
Right.
And they doubled Xavier Henderson against UCF. They took him out of the game. Well, then tight end Joe Royer has 8 catches. And the number 2 wide receiver, there's kind of a combo there, Tony Johnson and Jamoy Mays. They had 12 catches for over 100 yards. So 20 catches to guys that weren't Xavier Henderson. That wasn't possible in last year's offense. He can keep plays alive. He's tough. He'll run it if you need him to. Right. He ran the first touchdown last week on just quarterback power straight up the middle. so there's an offense that has some purpose, that has some reasoning and some flow behind it.
Yeah.
And that changes an entire outlook. That changes the entire program, because your defense doesn't have to be perfect.
Yep.
They can take one guy away and you're still going to get other things. And I think teams are still putting 8-9 in the box to try to stop Corey Kiner and slow down Cincinnati's run game. I think there's still another level as teams back off of that and start to worry about the pass, that Corey Kiner's going to get, again and start putting up some of those 150-yard games that we've seen. So it just unlocks so much.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question is, Cincinnati's run game last year, even with the record not being what anybody wanted it to be, they could still run the hell out of the football. I still believe that to be the case. You mentioned it. Teams are just loading up the box. I wouldn't say, Chad, they've necessarily done a bad job running the football.
No.
It's just when there's not a lot of holes, what are you going to do? But they still have been able to run the ball effectively. They can just really, really throw it. And that's the difference, is that if you're going to take away the run, okay, fine. Now we've got a guy that can punish you through the air, and not just beat and punish you through the air. That's got to be satisfying for an offense, knowing that, where, look, last year, we don't want to pound on anybody that just weren't capable of doing that.
Yeah, and I think it also unlocks something that people kind of have gotten lost in the shuffle here. Scott Satterfield is a very, very good offensive mind.
Mm-hmm.
Say what you will about his time at Louisville, and you experienced it kind of firsthand as a Louisville guy. He can call offense. And now you're allowing him to call offense with both a really, really potent running attack and a quarterback that can go out. You go back to the Texas Tech game, he put up, 400-plus yards and 5 touchdowns?
Yep.
So now all of a sudden, if you're a defensive coordinator, you're sitting in that meeting room sweating Monday through Friday, trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to take away? And if we take that away, are they still going to be able to beat us by doing the other thing? So, that just, it changes the trajectory of this football program. And all of a sudden now I'm back on Big 12 Insiders, because they can win now. They can play competitive football in this league, which they just weren't competitive a year ago.
Right.
And, there wasn't a reason to talk about Cincinnati last year.
Nope.
And now all of a sudden people are looking and going, hey, we might want to pay attention here. They beat Houston. They beat UCF. They went all the way down to the wire on the road in Texas Tech. They have shown they're a competent does that mean they're ready to compete for Big 12 championships? I don't think they're there yet, because the defense isn't there yet. But they can give a scare to anybody in this league.
Well, look, I picked UC to be last in the conference, and you gave me hell about it. The UC fans gave me hell about it. And now every week my whole stick is, looky here, UC fans, I keep pushing you up and pushing you up and pushing you up. And it wasn't because I admitted it. I was down on Scott Satterfield. He didn't get the quarterback right. You talked about that. He didn't at Louisville, but he's got it right. And he can call offensive football. So I'm glad, because, again, I like UC fan. I know I shouldn't say that as a Louisville fan, but I don't care. I just I've always liked UC. I never had that hatred. Even when I went to Xavier, I never had that hatred for UC. Maybe it's because I respect UC, and I don't know if this will anger people, but I was a Bob Huggins fan. I liked Bob Huggins. I did. I just liked his whole persona. But moving on from that, you mentioned the defense hasn't been great, but it kind of showed up on Saturday. It showed up on Saturday against UCF. I mean, you get 2 turnovers right out of the bat. Maybe they forced them. Maybe they didn't. I know they recovered them. I do know that. You got to give them credit. I'm not saying UCF is a great team. They changed quarterbacks, and then they changed them again in the game.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But you hold somebody to 13 points is holding somebody to 13 points, Chad. I don't care. I'm going to give them credit where credit is due, because a lot of people don't do that from time to time and want to make excuses for circumstances. Sometimes people create the circumstances, and I believe UC's defense, while much maligned this season, they created these circumstances on Saturday, and maybe it can start blossoming into something. Who knows?
Well, the thing that people have to remember, they brought in almost an entirely new defense between the freshman class and the portal. You know, they took Dante Corleone, they left him in the middle, and they said, we got to redo everything around him.
Right.
And then they bring in Tyson Veit, who was instrumental in helping Iowa State become every year the best defense in this conference. And he is implementing that system, and it's taking some time. I think one of the biggest things was, if you look at Iowa State, the reason that defense is great is their linebacker play over the past 8 years has been great.
Yes.
And Cincinnati was not getting that early in the season. Jared Bartlett came in from West Virginia. They had a guy that was the newcomer of the week in the Big 12, Jake Golday, came up from, the FCS level at Central Arkansas. And all of a sudden, their linebacker play is starting to pick up. And were they bad against Texas Tech? Yeah, that's a really good Texas Tech offense that can punish you in a lot of different ways. And they had a bad game, but they shut out Houston.
Yep. And
they gave up 13 to UCF. So in their 2 of their 3 Big 12 games, they've given up a total of 13 points. That's a sign of them starting to come around, starting to really grasp this system. As the linebacker play improves, as the safety play improves, I think you're going to continue to see this defense climb. I don't think they're going to, get to that Iowa State level, this season, but you can see that it's starting to have some consistency and have some continuity. And I really think that does begin and end with, how are the linebackers filling the middle of the field? Because they're with Dante Corleone, you're going to be good on the defensive line.
Absolutely.
and look, we talked about on this defense, they can't get after the quarterback. Don't look now. They're second in the Big 12 in sacks.
Correct.
So it's clicking. It's starting to get figured out. And the more and more confidence that grows, now you've got even, and if you can just get to average on defense, you've got a really good offense.
Correct.
Now, if you get to average on defense, all of a sudden, you can win a game 31-21 instead of having it be 44-41.
Correct.
Right? Like, you can put 30 and feel comfortable instead of feeling like, if we don't score every possession, we're in trouble.
Right. And that's a tough way to play football. A tough way to try to win. But here's the thing that I would say. I think UC fans would probably tell you the same thing, is that, first of all, in this conference, they're not out of it. Now, maybe you look at the rest of their schedule and all of that stuff, it is what it is, but they're not out of it. But I know they're kicking themselves because their profile looks a lot better if they don't give away that Pitt game. And that's the thing that I know they're just like, hold on a second. And we can talk about Pitt, and I know they're undefeated. I can say this unequivocally, UC gave that game away. They're better than Pitt, and they gave the game away. And so their profile would look better, but they have an opportunity. And I'm touched on this at the very beginning. You look at this schedule at the beginning of the season. There isn't a person on this earth that would have thought that this game would be this important when you saw the schedule come out. And Chad, this is a big football game, man. I don't care what anybody tries to say. This is a big football game between 2 pretty good teams. I like what's going on here, man.
Yeah, I think, like, as we're starting to get into, the breakdown of Arizona State leading up to Saturday, I watched them Friday night. Like, that is an offense that has gotten significantly better from the beginning of the season.
Yes.
Beginning of the season, it was Cam Scatterbo, and that was about it.
Correct.
And all of a sudden, their passing game is starting to develop off of the back of that. And, man, when you watch Scatterbo run, he is an animal.
Yeah,
like,
he is.
he gets hit, like, he gets hit, and he just kind of like, that didn't do. What do you think, that was going to stop me? And next thing you know, he's 12 yards down the field after 3 guys hit him in the hole, and he just doesn't go down. He just runs relentlessly, and they're physical, they're aggressive, and consider me a Kenny Dillingham fan. That move he pulled Friday night, as he bounced into the crowd and just got engulfed and disappeared in a sea of Arizona State fans. I love that stuff, man. He has got those guys playing hard for him.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, we'll talk about Arizona State, and I'm going to talk to Chris Karpman later today. But they believe in him. They believe in, and look, with the transfer portal, look, you've been doing this for a while. You understand it used to take programs 4-5 years to come out of the abyss that Arizona State was in. You get the right guys in your program, man. Doesn't take it that long anymore. It just doesn't. It's a different day and age. But speaking to that, how can UC win this football game on Saturday?
One, it's stopping the run. I think, they did a great job. They did not do a good job against Taj Brooks.
Right.
They contained him for a little bit, but then as the game wore on, he wore them down. And really that kind of swung that game in Texas Tech's favor. Against UCF, they shut down RJ Harvey.
They did.
I mean, they held him under 100 yards. He had a 31-yard run. He was under 4 yards a carry if you take that one big gain out. If they can do that to Arizona State, and you're not going to make them one-dimensional because, like I said, their passing game has developed quite a bit. If you can make them just a little more one-dimensional and take that comfort of, I think they're still in a position, even though they've improved. When we get better, or when we get back against the wall, we're giving the ball to Scatabo, and he's going to make something happen for us. If you can hold him under 100, you're not going to stop it. But if you can hold him under 100, I think the most interesting thing, noon game, they will be playing at 9 a.m.
That's correct.
on their internal clock.
That's correct.
So if you can jump out quick and make them play from behind, I think you've got a chance to really put a lot of game pressure on them that they maybe haven't experienced a lot of yet in an uncomfortable situation. Nippert Stadium, all of a sudden, is going to be loud, is going to be excited for this game. Like, this was supposed to be two of the three worst teams in the conference.
Right.
And now they're fighting to get up into that top five.
Absolutely.
They're tied for fourth right now, both of them. So it's an exciting, interesting game in a league that, look, we do all this content before the season. Here's the preseason rankings. Here's the preseason polls. Here's what we think about what this conference is going to look like. Arizona, Utah, Kansas. Like, look at all those teams that are perpetuating the bottom of those standings.
Yes.
And look who's hanging out near the top.
Yes.
It is not, it's completely upside down from what we thought. This game is going to be fun. And then next week they get Colorado, 10-15 in Boulder. And like, these are not two games that anybody circled and said, look, these games are going to be real important to how the Big 12 plays out. Cincinnati, Arizona, Cincinnati, Colorado the following week. That was not on anybody's bingo card.
No, it wasn't. I love it personally. Look, there's nothing better than competitive football. People complain and they want to say that the conference is mediocre. And I'm like, just look around the country. I mean, Vandy beat Alabama, for crying out loud. Don't tell me that parity in college football is a bad thing. I just don't want to hear it. First of all, Cincinnati, they had it going under Luke Fickell. He leaves. It takes a little bit, and I just believe that maybe this is the start of them just getting back. Maybe not to the heights, but who knows? Who knows? It's just starting. You know, who the hell says they can't compete for this conference? And I'm not even saying not this year. Look, I've covered the Big 12 for a long time. I've been around it for a long time, I should say. And anything can happen in this league, man. And we got 6 games to go. So anything can happen in this thing. So I want to thank you, Chad, for giving us your time today, man. I really do appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy, so I appreciate you coming on and just giving us a few minutes, man. So we want to thank you.
Big B, always a pleasure. And anytime you need me, you know where to find me, brother.
Absolutely. We appreciate Chad being on with us. We will be right back with Chris Karpman talking Arizona State and this Cincinnati matchup. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
All right, welcome back to Big 12 Insiders. We've got our man Chris Karpman here, who covers Arizona State for 24/7 Sports. Arizona State, man, is one of the surprises in the Big 12 this season. Has a really big game with Cincinnati, as we just talked to our man, Chad Brendel. So, Chris, first things first, man, how are you doing?
Doing fine. You know, always something university is what we like to refer to ASU as. So you got this big news coming out. Sam Leavitt's not going to go this week. Took a big rib shot against Utah. He's surprised that he was able to finish out that game. Big win for ASU. So Jeff Sims, next man up. You know, people are probably somewhat familiar with him. Had a really rough season last year at Nebraska. Lost his starting job, ended up transferring. Before that, he was moderately successful, I would say, at Georgia Tech. Turnover prone, but very athletically gifted. So we're going to get a chance to see what he can do.
Here's the thing, and we just talked, and on Big 12 game day, we recorded that, and Big 12 Insiders game day, that is, and we talked about this a little bit. And the thing about it is, I don't think that, how should I say this? I don't think Kenny Dillingham would have brought him in if he didn't think that he could help some of these turnover issues. Look, he came here obviously to start. He didn't get the starting job. He didn't win the job. But I just don't think Kenny Dillingham's bringing him in here and doesn't believe that he could fix what his issues were. I don't think he would have bothered. It's a senior. He's transferred. There's no reason for him to do that. He's building a program. If he didn't see something in him and think that he could fix whatever those wrongs are and get him to play good football.
Yeah, or at least improve them, right?
Correct.
It's an on-off switch. You don't necessarily need to, you know, look at it in those terms. I just think, hey, this is a very athletically gifted guy, and Dillingham, of course, along with Marcus Arroyo, they felt like we can make him better. Multiple times this year, Brian, Dillingham's referred to Sims as a Sunday talent. Just, you know, with his physical tools, he's very athletic, big arm, great size. He's just been really turnover prone and struggled with the processing of in the pocket and ball security. So how resolvable actually is that? It's tough to say.
Right.
But certainly he felt very intrigued by the potential and the ability to work with him. And he said just today that he's very excited about seeing what he has to do, and he has a lot of confidence in him.
Gotcha. Moving past that, Chris, how big of a win was that for Arizona State on Friday night?
Very big culturally. You know, Kenny Dillingham likes to talk about we're going to have more fun working harder than we ever have in our lives. And when you're an 18 to 24-year-old person, if that isn't resulting in some tangible success, then it becomes harder and harder to keep buying in and giving that amount of effort and energy. But when you're 5-1, you are going to think, oh, our coach was right. If we put in the time and the effort and the energy and we work really hard, there's going to be fruits to that labor. And I think that is something that is sustainable. That's what you can have leaders take from what's happening this season and then use that with their teammates the rest of the year and beyond to try to push that agenda forward.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, to me, it just seemed like a big-time cultural win. Like, first of all, he was having a ton of fun after the game, which I love to see that. That was great. And here's the thing. It building a program, you know, it's not like the old days, Chris, where you get a program, it goes to the turmoil. We talked last week about what Herm Edwards tried his damnedest to do to Arizona State. We talked about that. And usually in the past, it was, you know, 3, 4, 5 years to try to build a program. I'm in no way saying that Arizona State has arrived because there's still a lot of football left. But from where they were to where they are, to me, is amazing. I think it's a great job. Having said all of that, it doesn't take that long anymore with the transfer portal to build a program if you get the right guys. Now, it can crush you if you get the wrong guys, and we've seen programs that it gets crushed. Doesn't seem like that's happened at Arizona State. It seems like Kenny Dillingham has his pulse on what he wants to bring in as far as transfer wise to get this thing going up quicker. And I would say that Arizona State, they didn't miss steps. Sometimes you can just jump over steps. And I think maybe that's what they've done. Again, a lot of football still left, but I don't think they skipped any steps along the way. It's just, hey, we're better. We're able to jump steps, if that makes sense.
It does, because just a couple of years ago, you could only add 25 new players in a year. So
right.
to have a turnover of an entire roster took 3 to 4 years of your players. You can accomplish that now in 2 years. ASU only has 5 players on scholarship who were on the team 2 seasons ago. So they have accelerated their departure from a losing culture effectively. And look, they've benefited from some fortuitous situations. Cam Rising probably shouldn't have been playing, had 3 turnovers in the game, and he looked really like he struggled. ASU's won a bunch of close games. It was funny. Dillingham had Steve Nash talk to the team on Monday, 2-time NBA MVP, one of the best athletes to ever be in Arizona, and with the Phoenix Suns. And the message was, results aren't what you should be focused on. It's process. The results come from process. And so continue all the things that you've been doing. And if anything, work even harder, do even more on the, studying film and the sleeping and eating habits and all these little things that in the aggregate as a team impact winning. And, I don't think ASU is going to win the Big 12 this year or anything like that. But all of this is about, to your point, it's building a successful culture, a successful program that is sustainable. And ASU probably only has 20-25% of its 2 deep as seniors. Right. So the goal is to retain everybody else that you like and you want, to project confidence in the transfer portal and then in the 2025, 2026 recruiting classes. And then your talent notches forward, the understanding of what you're doing schematically notches forward, and the understanding of what it takes from an effort and time standpoint notches forward. And that's how you become like the teams that you aspire to be, which Dillingham has often cited Utah as one of those examples.
Gotcha. So a lot of times after a big win, you see programs, especially programs that haven't had a lot of success, the next week they go on the road and it's a problem. It kind of aligns down that road. Unfortunately, Chris, you big win. You lose your quarterback. He's not going to play this week. You're going on the road. Not to mention you're going on the road and then you're crossing 2 time zones and you're playing at 9 o'clock in the morning. It almost seems like the football gods are saying, okay, Arizona State, great. We know you won, but we're going to throw all of this at you all at once. How do you handle that? That can be concerning for a program, as you mentioned, Chris, that hasn't had a lot of success. How do they, I guess, try to change that motto and turn it into a positive and go out to Cincinnati and try to get a win?
Yeah, great questions. You set it up, I think, perfectly. First thing that they did was they moved up their meetings and their practice by like an hour to an hour and a half. Like they phased it in this week because kickoff is essentially 9 a.m. Arizona time. They practice at 9 a.m. Arizona time already, but this morning they were out there at 7:45 a.m. They were arriving in the building at about 6:15 a.m. And, this is to try to adjust the body clock to get guys to start going to bed earlier so that they are already ready for when they get to Cincinnati. And they're traveling Thursday instead of Friday. So they'll be at dinner in Cincinnati at, I think, 7:30 Cincinnati time on Thursday. And then they'll have a day to sort of continue to make those adjustments. And it matters because they haven't played nearly as well on the road as they have at home. And that is one sort of indicator of a young team that's still trying to figure out how to do this on a week in, week out basis. They haven't had the same level of physicality or intensity playing in Texas, and now they got a much longer trip going to Ohio, and they have their backup quarterback. So I agree with you. I think those things stack up to make this arguably the toughest game that they will have had to this point.
Gotcha. So last week, Cincinnati, they go on the road. They beat UCF. I don't know if we're going to say UCF's a good football team or not. It doesn't really matter. I think UCF can run the football, and Cincinnati didn't let them do that. Cincinnati's been able to find some ways to bring some defense because that's been their concern. But the last 2 games, they played pretty well on defense. So what are some of the things that they're going to have to do, especially with the backup quarterback? I imagine, and again, I talked about this, Chris, on the Big 12 Insiders game day, and I said, look, Arizona State's got to give the ball to Cam Skattebo 40 times. Then you give it to him 40 times to go win the football game. It is what it is. Backup quarterback on the road, all these things going on, but you do have this guy. So if you got to ride him into the sunset and literally until his legs fall off, I think you do it to go win this football game, don't you?
Yeah, there's no way around it. It's bad luck for ASU that Cincinnati just played UCF, given the fact that they are so run heavy,
right?
And what ASU is going to have to do in this game. Now maybe they run a little bit differently. And Jeff Sims is an athletic guy, and so you're going to get more optionality into some of your run game concepts and things that they'll probably try to do to take advantage of that as an asset. There's no way that ASU can or should expect Jeff Sims to have to throw the ball all over the yard on the road in his first start for ASU to beat Cincinnati. Like, that's not going to work. So
right.
I think as important as anything, ASU has to generate 3 and outs and get a good rhythm defensively to try to prevent this from becoming a shootout or anything that resembles what ASU would need to be a higher scoring game, because that's not a recipe for success. So ASU has had very good time of possession. They've done very well with their run defense. An element that was a weakness until Utah was red zone defense, which got much better in that game. So if they can move those things forward, and then Jeff Sims at least is ball secure, where he's not turning the football over, and Skattebo has a normal game, not necessarily a hero, got a cape on, anything like that, but just a normal game.
Right.
Then I think ASU will probably be in it with a chance in the fourth quarter. And this team has shown a lot of resiliency in those types of situations.
Well, the one thing that, and you mentioned, or you brought up Jeff Sims and just not being turnover prone. Here's the thing though, Chris, he does have starts on the road. You know, if you're going on the road in all these circumstances, I don't think you could have a better situation than having an older guy that started a lot of football games in general and also has road starts in him. So I get it that he's not your starter. He's transferred in first game. I understand all that. But at the positive, again, with everything else that's going into this game, I think that is one thing that you got to look at and say, you know what, we've got a mature guy here that has experience on the road. So while we don't want him throwing it 30 times a game, I would guess, don't be afraid, because this guy's not going to go into this game afraid, because he's played on the road in some big time environments before.
Totally agree. He started the first game 4 seasons in a row in college, and he played a lot at Georgia Tech, 30-something games, right? So he's got way more experience than Sam Levitt playing on the road. He also has a big arm, and ASU is going to want to try to get some shot plays in. So, you know, the areas that are more questionable about his game are progression reading from the pocket, intermediate throws, things of that nature. So you'll probably see those things get squeezed down more. And you'll see a lot of play actions that are shorter variety to your tight ends, things where you get options and levels concepts on the move, throw to your running backs, and then some shot plays. But if anybody like just totally writes off Jeff Sims, they're making a mistake, because he's played some very good football games. It just is not necessarily reliable on any given weekend that that's going to be a good game.
Gotcha. Yep. Makes total sense. Well, first of all, I want to thank you again, Chris, for taking the time to join us, man. You've always been very gracious with your time. We appreciate you helping us build this channel up. So should be a good game in Cincinnati. It's going to be a fun atmosphere. Cincinnati, they know their football there. It's an early start. And I wish ESPN got on the ball, that it wasn't have to be on ESPN Plus. I'm like, what are we doing here? It makes no sense, but I'll be watching anyway, so it doesn't matter. So we appreciate you, Jeff. Thank you for taking the time, or not Jeff, Chris. Sorry, I kept getting out Jeff Sims. I'm sorry, but thank you, Chris, for giving us your time today, my man. And we will talk to you again soon.
Always my pleasure, Brian. Really love the show. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you. And thank you guys, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate it. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate you guys. We're still growing, man. We are still growing, and it's all because of you guys, man. So I really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Make sure you tune into this football game, though. It's going to be a good one. It's early. It's on ESPN Plus. Come on, ESPN, but it is what it is. Cincinnati hosting Arizona State. Make sure you guys check it out. Continue to hit that notification bell so you know when all Big 12 Insiders content comes out. We will talk to you soon.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.